Hello again, this is Sandy at Talk of Thailand, and today we're continuing the story of my employment here in Thailand and the nightmare that it was to become, that it was when I left the previous video. I'd gone into my reception and how things were panning out. But as I tell this story today, I think we'll do it a little bit different. I think while I'm telling the story, we'll have a bit of a drive around, a bit of a ride around Pattaya on a motorcycle with my wife, and we'll stop maybe down John Tien Beach, have a walk along the beach, and have a look around Pattaya. Better than just sitting looking at me rattling on all the time. So that's what we're going to try today, and let me know if you think it works okay, and I'll know it's a good format, whether it's a good format or not to do in future videos, but that's what we'll try. So, at the end of the last video, I was here in Thailand, and I was working for some large crane operators from Middlesbrough. And things weren't going too well. I'd been sent out here under false pretenses in the disguise of a sales engineer to really monitor what was going on and to provide accurate information back to the head office in the UK. And of course, the prime object of the job was still to find work for these cranes out here, which meant that I would spend a lot of time trying to build up relationships with various companies and get myself known, talk to the relevant people wherever they were, and that was the prime object of the job that I understood. But maybe maybe it was a case of I was wrong, and it's not really what was wanted. Anyway, so let's continue. Well, after the initial period and a trip down to Singapore and getting this laptop, etc., things did get better. They rented me a car, so I had my own transport. I had to get around to various sites. I was up and down to Bangkok a lot because in Bangkok, a lot of the head offices were there, and go up there and talk to the various people, try and find out what projects were in the pipeline, what sort of craneage they'd be needing, where they'd be located, etc., when we'd be able to have a look at plans so we could maybe start costing the jobs, and that is what I set about doing. I had a car, and and I was doing this running around, mostly in Thailand then. I did think about going back down to Singapore for a while, but at that time Thailand was keeping me busy. There was enough people to talk to in Thailand, and I was also concerned about the whole future of what I was doing, because I couldn't see a future, and I couldn't see where this was going to develop or go to. It was like a dead-end position that had no room for expansion or moving up, which is at that time was something I was looking to do all the time, advance a career. And I realized very sadly that I'd sort of dug a hole for myself, and I couldn't really see any way out of it at that time. However, we continued and along, and I moved out the Ambassador Hotel. They gave me a rent allowance, so I could rent somewhere that I wanted to stay as opposed to staying in a hotel, because staying in a hotel for 6 months is the novelty wears thin. I know some people they like staying in hotels for long periods, but I like a little bit of break away from that. So when they gave me this rental allowance, I was lucky. I rented a house in Pattaya to start with. It was a 3-bedroom house. It had a nice garden. I had a gardener, I had a maid that would clean the house, etc. So all went pretty good there. I started enjoying life a little bit, and I'll just tell you a brief story actually too, which also changed and had a significant effect on my life, unfortunately. Was that when I was moving around meeting all these people in the various sites, I was finding out a lot of jobs that the company I worked for couldn't do because their equipment was too large and it was too tied up in the project that they were working on. But what I was doing, I was discovering quite a few smaller jobs that needed craneage, etc. And I kind of mentioned this to the people who I was working for in Thailand here, the head of operations. I said, look, I'm beginning to find out a lot of these small jobs, and we obviously don't have the cranes to do it, but perhaps we could pass these jobs on and get some sort of commission from the companies that took the jobs. And he thought that was a good idea. We worked alongside in partnership with a company called The Crane, who had a lot of small cranes and done many of these type of jobs. And he said it would have been ideal working closely with them. And indeed, I did actually furnish them with a lot of information, and they did get quite a few jobs. But then something happened, you know. I got a visit from this female sales rep from another crane company that was based very close in Maptaput, and a very presentable female. And she came to visit me, and she asked me if I'd like to go out for lunch. Very nice, and nice company, so we went for lunch. And she outlined the idea that her company was also into cranes, and they would be very happy to get any leads from me as well that I found out, because they knew that I was giving quite a lot to the crane. And indeed, the manager at the crane had told her manager that she should come and speak to me, and maybe she'd get some work from me. No problem for me. No skin off mine was to give them work, and they were agreeing with some commission aspects that I wasn't even part of. That was getting discussed between the head of operations and the various characters involved in the other two companies. But I must admit I was very impressed with this very nice looking female sales rep that came to see me. So we had our lunch, and she went off, and then the next day I think she came back with a whole host of literature of what cranes they had, etc. And for my reference, and so if I saw any jobs that were good for her, then I could pass them on to her. And then she also asked me what I was doing at the weekends, and I said, well, I don't do a lot at the weekends because we work a 6-day week here, albeit that on a Saturday I try to skip off a bit early after lunch and have an afternoon in town and rest on Sunday, and then back to work on Monday. So the only real day off I've got at the weekend is Sunday. So she then said, well, do you play golf? Well, I do play golf, but not very well, but I do play golf. So she suggested that we go for a game of golf on Sunday, and she would facilitate the golf and etc. and it would be a good day out. Well, that sounded fantastic. I really looked forward to that. And on the Sunday, Julie went to this very nice golf course. I managed to rent a set of golf clubs there, and we went out. We had a very, very pleasant day playing around that golf course, and a nice chat, and we had a nice meal, and everything was going well. And I kind of guess you may already know where this story is going, unfortunately. Well, after the golf day, I didn't really hear from this lady again for 3 or 4 weeks, although I was in contact by email, etc., and I did send off some queries to her that I know she got work from, etc., but she was in my mind, put it that way. She was in my mind, and I enjoyed my time with her. And then I think it was maybe another month or so before the next step was that she asked me if I'd like to go out for a dinner one evening. And, well, it all went the way that it went. I wasn't an innocent party by any means, and we ended up staying together, and our relationship got more and more and more, and it became a problem. And this was a relationship that was going to end my marriage, unfortunately. And I won't go into it anymore, but that's the way that happened. And living in Pattaya, I also started to get in with a lot more expats down there. I started finding out the social scene, so I wasn't staying in every night like I did when I was in the Ambassador Hotel, and life was getting a lot better. Consequently, the house I rented, I was told by the lady who rented it to me that she was putting it on the market for sale, and I said okay. And I was paying quite a high rent for this place, and I said, well, I asked her how much she was putting it up for, and she told me, and I worked it out, and I thought, well, the money I'm getting from the company to rent a house could actually go as paying up a mortgage on the place. And I expected to be in Thailand for quite some time, so it might work out very well. Better than giving rent away and not getting anything in return. If I purchased a house, then it was an asset that may be of value in the future. Well, that is true, and I put down a deposit of from my own money, and then I continued to live there, utilising my rental allowance to pay off the mortgage, which all went very well for a while. But unfortunately, this house that I had purchased, albeit very nice, very similar to the one I'm living in now. Actually, it was a 3-bedroom bungalow. And when the proverbial hit the fan, which was going to happen very shortly, it became a problem for me, this house, because I had this house, I had the mortgage, I was tied into that, and I didn't really know what was coming towards me, and that it was serious. So what did happen? Well, what happened was I got involved with some French company, I won't mention their name, who were big construction engineers all over the world, and they were doing a lot of work here in Thailand as well. And I actually got cranes working from them, not so much from, I think I got the mobile crane, our mobile crane, on a job for them. And also I got several cranes from this girl company and from the crane company that we were associated with. I got them all on the site as well. So it was going quite well. And at this time, relationship between myself and the director of operations was very nondescript, actually, because he would go and do his job, and he had given up on me. I think he realized that I wasn't going to be run off the site as easily as he thought it was going to be. So we carried on, and with this French company, they eventually, over a conversation one afternoon, they told me that there was a big job that they were involved in that was coming up in Indonesia, and that they had started working on the plans for this job now, and they were going to need some very heavy craneage to do some of the installations on those sites. And if I was involved, if I wanted to become involved, then indeed they would start giving me the information of what they were doing, and I could look at it and start planning how we could help out and work on the contract terms, etc., etc. So that's what we did, and it went quite well. I was getting a lot of information. I was getting information both locally from the people in Thailand, both on site in Rayong and in their main offices in Bangkok. And then I started getting more detailed information from the project engineers that were working in Paris, and it was all going very, very well. Now, another significant part of the story now is that whilst all this was going on, the director of the crane, who's a co-director of the company that I was working for, set up another association with an Australian company, and they were going to build heavy low loaders and trailers, etc., for logistical reasons, for moving heavy stuff around, etc. And they were going to build it. They were going to build these big trailers, etc., in the big shed that was located very close to the office that I was working in. And to that end, they sent the head of the Australian organisation came up, a very, very nice guy from Queensland, and he came up with his lead project engineer, who was going to be the project engineer on site, and they got working there together and setting up how they could reorganise this shed and all the rest of it. And there was some offices upstairs in the shed that could be utilised for the engineers' use, with all the necessary equipment, computers, printers, etc. And they actually started fitting it out, including putting all the major construction jigs, etc., onto the floor of this very large shed, so they could facilitate the building of all these trailers, etc. Now, the Australian company was a very, very experienced trailer builder, and I mean very experienced, probably one of the biggest in Australia actually, and they made some huge trailers, bigger than anything I'd ever seen before. But the significant part was that the engineer, the project engineer, on-site project engineer, who was also a general manager, rented a house just a few doors away from where I was staying. And consequently, he moved in there with his wife and two daughters, and the two daughters went to an international school here at a huge cost. It's a very expensive business sending children to international schools here, and maybe I'll make that a subject of a video at another time. But anyway, his two daughters went to school here, and his wife settled down. She liked to go up to Bangkok and do shopping. She got a little business going herself, buying jewellery, silver jewellery, etc., down in the Chinese quarter, earrings, necklaces, bangles, etc., silver, and sending them back to Australia, and they were getting sold back there at a profit, and she was making money that way, and it all seemed to be going well for them as well. Well, coming back to myself, I got an invitation to go down to Paris to talk with the project engineers involved in the Indonesian project. And it was close to the time that I was due to return to the UK anyway, for my 2 weeks off. So I suggested to the director here that I was working alongside that I will combine the trip to Paris to talk about this project, and with my 2 weeks off that it was coming due very shortly. And he said, yeah, that sounds a good idea, a good plan. And he said we need to start talking about it and looking at what I've got so far, so he would assist me in whatever way he could, which I was thankful of, because albeit he was a nasty, horrible character, Now that we were going our separate ways, with just the odd and antagonistic move from him to upset me, things weren't so bad. And he did have very good experience on the cranial side. Not that there's a big science to it. It's just knowing the equipment and how it needs to be set up to do the various lifts, etc. And he had that experience, much more than I did, of course. So we worked along that for a few days, and then as the time was coming close, he decided that I wasn't going to go to Paris. He was going to go to Paris and he was going to take his girlfriend. So he organised himself a flight, etc. And for him and his girlfriend at the company's expense, with the hotels in Paris, etc. Went a trip to his home in Hull in Humberside, and he said he'd see me when he got back. But before he left, I said to him, listen, I said, it is close to my time to go home anyway for my 2 weeks. And he said, and he did say, well, he said, could I delay that until such time as he got back? Well, I'd already made a doctor's appointment, and as I said earlier, the discovery of the fact that I had type 2 diabetes, and I was under medication, and my medication was in the point of I had to consider various things. So I said that to do with this. I said I had already had a doctor. If you're going to be away, I don't need to be here anyway. I can go home. I can do my things. I can get my doctor's appointment, and I can then come back here to Thailand, and we can discuss your visit to Paris when you come back and see what we're going to do from there. So he said, yeah, okay, that'll do. So off he went. He disappeared off, him and his girlfriend, to UK and then on to Paris. And then about a few days later, I had decided, I had my flight booked to travel back to the UK, and I said to the office manager then, it was relegated to the financial accounts manager, to look after the girls and etc. in the office and to run the office. So I said to him, I said, look, can you book me the chauffeur to take me to the airport on blah blah date? I've got the flight at this time at night, and so. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll organise that. I'll get the driver organised to take you to the airport. Fine. And then it started to get. Now I see how suspicious it got, but I didn't really identify it then. Was that one of the girls in the office, very nice girl actually. She was more or less straight from university, and she was doing she was doing some sort of accounting degree, and they'd taken her on in the office as to work with the accounts manager. Now I think he had more ideas than I shouldn't. I won't even go down there actually, but I know he was attracted to the lady anyway. So just before I was due to leave for this trip back to UK, she came to me and she said, Mr. Sandy, she said, you're going home for 2 weeks? I said, yes. She said, can I ask a favour of you? She said, can I borrow your laptop while you're away? Because it would help me with my studies, and I've got some things I need to do at home, and I only have the desktop PC here. If I could borrow your laptop, it would be a great help to me. And I thought about it. I thought, well, I'm not really going to be using it at home, and the chances of me having to go into anything as if I'd been going to Paris, certainly I would have needed it, but that was taken out my hands. So I said, yeah, okay, you can have it. It's only for 2 weeks anyway. So I gave her my laptop as I left. So then the day of my departure, I got a message from the accounts manager again saying, Sandy, the driver's not well. He can't take you to the airport tonight. You're going to have to make your own way to the airport. And I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll just book a taxi. I can claim it back on expenses anyway. And that's what I done. I booked a taxi and I went to the airport and for my flight back to the UK, not realising that I'd just been perfectly set up for what was about to happen. So I got back to the UK, and whilst I was in the UK, normally when I went back, within 3 or 4 days I got a return ticket with all the travel information that I needed to get back to Thailand. But I'd gone about 10 days and I hadn't heard anything. So I contacted the office by email and I said, can you please furnish me with a ticket and the travel information for my return to Thailand? For a bombshell to hit me just a couple of hours later saying, we're sorry to tell you that your position in Thailand is no longer required and your contract has now been terminated without notice, and we will not be providing a return ticket to Thailand. I think you can imagine how that hit me, actually. I had all my stuff out in Thailand. I had the house and the mortgage out there. Quite a bit of my own money tied up in that house as well. So I got extremely distressed very quickly over this matter. I tried ringing the managing director in the UK. He wouldn't take my call. I tried ringing the sales director, who I've been having regular contacts with. He wouldn't talk to me. Nobody would correspond with me. And then I thought, well, maybe I should go down to Middlesbrough and go to the offices to see them. And then I thought, well, if they're not going to talk to me by email and they're going to talk to me by telephone, what do I actually achieve by going to the offices, except for maybe being an embarrassment to myself and making matters worse? I might get arrested for trespassing or something of that ilk. It might not go too well. So what I did was then I went to see a solicitor, a lawyer, and I explained to them what happened, and he contacted the company. And then he got a statement that had been written by the Director of Operations in Thailand saying that I had left Thailand without informing anybody. I had gone to the airport and went to the UK without anybody's knowledge that I was going, and consequently they considered that gross misconduct and my contract was then terminated. Bullshit, absolute bullshit. And I did have witnesses, etc. in Thailand. And I did have emails, actually, that kind of backed up my story as well. So I went to see this lawyer and we discussed it and all the rest of it. And he said, yeah, he said, he a very good case, and he didn't think that they had much of a chance of getting out of their commitments, which the commitment was that either party decided to terminate the contract, then the equivalent of 6 months' wages would have to be paid in lieu of notice, either from them to me, as was the case, or if I had quit without giving them notice, then I had to pay them 6 months equivalent of my wages. So that's what I was after. I was after that 6 months wages, which was a reasonable sum. So this went on for some weeks, actually, and I couldn't wait any longer, because they were arguing back and forward, and they started with some very silly offer, making me an offer of some very small amount. But it was significant in that my lawyer then told me it was the first indication of an admission of guilt on their part. So he could then progress from there to seek the full amount. Unfortunately, he wasn't as good a lawyer as he made out, and it seemed like every time from then on I got an offer, he said, well, why don't you accept that? He said, and then we can close this case. But it was still not what I wanted. I wanted the full 6 months. In the end, I'll tell you now, in the end I didn't get 6 months, I got the 3 months. That's how high they went. And I got tied up in other things, as you'll find out, and I just said, okay, give me the 3 months, that'll do, and we'll shut the case. But I did have to go back to Thailand, because I had the house there, all my belongings, I had a lot of belongings there, etc. And I was really, really very bitter and depressed about what had just happened to me. So I made my way back to Thailand and got to the house, and I didn't really know what I was going to do or how I was going to do, because selling property in Thailand, yes, it sells, but it's not an easy process like it is in the UK or Europe. Things don't tend to happen very quickly, and property doesn't gain in value the same way as it does in UK or Europe. Although there was an increase, it wasn't any great significant increase because of the short time that I'd had this property. So anyway, I went back, and the first thing I did when I got back actually was I went and got an estate agent to come and look at the house, and they put it on the market. And then I was sitting there, I went out for a couple of games of golf, and then one of these games of golf I went out on, strangely enough, I went to a golf course here, and who should be on this golf course but the director of operations with some relative that he had from the UK. And I came across him midway around the course somewhere, and when he saw me, I saw him go, not white, but I could see he was shocked. And he tried to make out, "Hi, Sandy, old pal." I said, "Don't you fucking talk to me, Sandy, old pal." So the next I seen was them all getting in the cart, and his girlfriend was there as well, and them heading back off towards the clubhouse. And as I carried on, I was about halfway around, I saw, very quickly after that, I saw their car leave the clubhouse. So they'd given up their game of golf because they'd seen me and disappeared off. So he chickened out of having a confrontation with me at that time, which is maybe just as well, because I was very, very bitter. And I'll tell you some of the things that were going through my mind. And the problem was I was drinking a lot then, because depression and burying yourself in alcohol is easy. It helps you sleep at night, and it's not good. It's not a good answer to anything, but it was the answer I had at that time. But the depression increased, and it got pretty bad. I started contemplating buying a gun. That's no lie. I started contemplating buying a gun, and I contemplated, okay, I want to kill this bastard that caused me all this problem. And I planned that I'd go round to his condo. He lived in a condo down Jomtien. I'd go round to his condo one morning, early morning, when I knew he'd be coming out to go to work, and I'd wait near his car, and when he came down from the condo, I'd go out and blow the guy's brains out with a gun, and then I would shoot myself. That's the state of mind I was in. And I even actually progressed that state of mind to going downtown and talking with someone I knew in a bar and asking them if they could buy a gun for me, a handgun. And they said yes, they could, and they got me a price, etc. And I said, okay, just give me a couple of days, and I'll try to think this out. So I knew where there was a gun, and that I was getting more and more. This is the way to go. I've destroyed my family in the UK. That factor was then gone. My wife, she'd come through a very, very hard time with the 2 daughters that I had. They went renegade on her. One of them even breaking some bones in my wife's hand. So she wasn't going through a very pleasant time, and I felt sorry for her too. Everything was building up and it was going bad. So then a light at the end of the tunnel suddenly started to glitter in the darkness. And it was out one night when I bumped into my friend from Australia who was building the trailers. And he saw me in his bar and he came across, him and his wife, and they sat down beside me and we had something to eat actually. And he had heard what had happened and he gave me his apologies and regards of whatever they do, and he was sorry for what had gone on, and if he could have helped, he would have helped. But he asked me what I planned to do, and I said, right, well, as soon as I can get the house sold, I'll probably move back to the UK and see where I can pick up from there, which in actual fact might have been the best solution for me. But that's not the way it went. Because unbeknown to me, this Australian guy was having some severe problems, marital problems, in that he had found 2 or 3 Thai ladies that he had taken a big attraction to, much more of an attraction than his wife liked actually. And she actually caught him out on a couple of occasions to whatever he had done with these girls, and she was not impressed. And then she started to become very schizophrenic about the whole situation in Thailand, and to a point which worked out perfectly for me, sadly for her, and sadly for him, that she said to him that unless he gave up his job immediately and moved back with them to Brisbane in Australia, she was going to go back with the 2 girls and she was going to divorce him. All that he loved the job and the good salary he was on, and he enjoyed life here in Thailand, thankfully his wife and daughters still came first in his eyes, and he immediately sent his resignation down to his parent company in Australia. They asked him, consequently they asked him if he had any idea of anybody there that might be interested in and capable of doing the job. And luckily for me, he knew me, and we went out one night for a beer again, and he talked to me about this, and we went through it all. I knew what he was doing there. I'd been up his office many times. It was a proper job, a good job, and I felt more than capable of doing that job. Albeit I'd never built trailers before, but neither had I been concerned with cranes before. And it's strange how engineering happens to you these days. I started life as an electrical engineer, became a marine engineer, then became a crane engineer, and then building trailers and blah blah blah, and then from then on I went on to other things as well. But anyway, he talked to me about this, and I said, yeah, I'd be very interested in that job. He said, okay, give me your CV and he'll send it down to his boss in Australia with his recommendation that I take over from him. So that's what I did, and he sent it off down. So the next I had, about 3 or 4 days later, his boss from Australia was coming up to talk with me, go through it all, and we'll see how it went from there. But he thought that I would probably get the job, which, wow, that took a weight off my mind, and immediately I started to get my life back into order again. I saw where I was going wrong, and I thought, if this is an opportunity, I've got to make the most of it, I've got to get it right. So I got back on an even keel very, very quickly. But my problems didn't stop there, because 3 days later, or 4 days later, whenever it was, that this Australian guy, very nice guy, came up from Australia to talk with me. He went to visit his co-director at the crane in Bangkok, who was also the co-director of the crane company that I had been employed by, and he had been got at by the operations director that I worked with before, saying that he heard that there was a chance that I was going to get a job in Thailand with this Australian company, and he thought that that would be very bad for him and for his operation in Thailand. Well, I'm glad he thought that way. It certainly crossed my mind that I could maybe make things a bit harder for them. Anyway, the idea of shooting him was no longer in my head, so that was one saviour. But he did try to interject, and he did try to prevent my employment, and the consequence of that was that when I spoke to the Australian director, he was quite level with me. He said, look, he'd been talking with this guy in Bangkok, and he didn't really want him to give me the job, but he said that the decision was his. Unfortunately, he was a very level-headed guy. He said, and he told me truthfully, he said that he didn't really have 100% confidence in his Thai counterpart that was part of the joint operation that they set up. And to have somebody that wasn't on too friendly terms with this guy might be advantageous, and once again he would be getting accurate information back to Australia, and he would have confidence in the person that was in the office. I took great respect from that, and that was good for me that he thought that way. Cut a long story short, and I'll stop a short story getting longer than it should. He did offer me the job, and I accepted the job, and that went very well. So my job then was to run this trailer manufacturing business, and I'd be responsible for all aspects of that business, from accounting to purchasing to manufacturing to quality assurance, blah blah blah, the whole issue. I was also the liaison part between Thailand and Australia, and the Australian design office, they were responsible for doing all the designs of what we were building, and they would send them up to me, and I would implement their designs in Thailand. All going very well, and it went very well for some time actually. And then up to actually 98. Now I don't remember exactly how long with each, but in end of 97, beginning of 98, the Thai economy totally collapsed. Totally collapsed. It went from 44 bahts to the pound up to one night in particular, it got to 99 bahts to the pound before the World Bank stepped in, and then it slowly worked its way down and sat around 70 for a long time, bahts to the pound. And Thailand was in deep economical problems, which brought a lot of the big projects that were happening to a close, because these were all had all run out of money very quickly when the Thai baht collapsed like that. And a lot of expats went home, and a lot of operations came to an end, and indeed they stopped buying some of the trailer orders that we had received, and we got deposits for, and we were building the trailers. They cancelled them, they lost their deposits, and the writing was on the wall for us as well as the trailer manufacturer. And okay, then I knew the job was over, for sure. And it was a case of closing down the company and sorting out the assets, and I already had a finishing date, what date I'd finished with the company, which was okay. Which was about 2 months or something further down the line from where we were at that time. So, at least it gave me a chance. And the other significant thing that happened, of course, is that I met a Scottish guy downtown Pattaya that I knew from my hometown, and I'd known him for many, many years. And he had retired and moved to Pattaya. And he'd met a lady, and he was proposing to get married to her. In fact, she was pregnant at the time. And he was looking to buy some place to live. And I said to him, I said, hey, come up to my place for dinner tonight. And which him and his girlfriend, future wife, they did. And they came up to my house in central Pattaya there, which was still a lovely house. and came in. I said, listen, we had our dinner and we had a few beers and coffee and some brandy and everybody's in the right frame of mind. I said to him, listen, I said, if you're serious about buying a house, what do you think of this place? And he said, this is beautiful. He said, this would suit him down to the ground. I said, well, it's for sale, I need to get it sold. And then we discussed the price and we shook hands on the deal. I lost money, I did lose some money, but not as much as I could have lost. And he bought the house from me. And I ended up moving out and renting a small place till I believed that the job was to come to an end. So that worked out. So now that the job was coming to an end, I felt, okay, it's in control again. At least I've got control of it. And that's what I thought. Wrong. How very, very wrong I was. Because, as part of the closing down, just before the chap from Australia, the director from Australia, was coming up to have a closing down meeting with the Thai director, and I was to be involved in that meeting also. And after that meeting, I was free to go. But just a couple of days before they came up, there was an inquiry came up in for about 100 trailers to be built for Sudan. And there was a group of people coming from Sudan for a meeting with the Thai director and the Australian director, and if they could agree the price, then the trailers would be built here in Thailand and shipped down to Sudan, along with a support crew to make sure that we're all put together right in Sudan, all the wheels put on, etc., and all set up properly for use in Sudan. So it was a big contract, many millions of dollars actually. I think, it was millions and millions of bahts anyway, but there was a lot of money in dollars as well. So when the Australian director came up for what had originally been proposed to be a closing down meeting, but was now being a possible sales meeting, they took this group of Sudanese people out for a meal and enjoyed themselves in Bangkok, etc. And then I think it was more or less agreed the way forward that we were going to build these things in Thailand, and they would transfer a deposit to our account, and we would start on the work right away. So the next day, the Australian director came to me and he said, Sandy, he said, I know you're due to go home, and whenever it was, he said, but we've got this contract for 100 trailers, and what that might lead to, we don't know. He said, but he said, I need you, I would like you to stay and oversee the building of these trailers. And I said, well, yeah. I said, I'm very happy about that. That's more work for me. I said, I'm beginning to need a break. I said, I've been out going on. I said, I've booked a flight, I've paid for a flight. I said, and it's about 3-4 weeks' time. I said, I'll get the thing up on the way. It was a bit longer than that, about 6 weeks away, I think. I said, I'll get the show running, but I want to go home for a few days. When my flight date comes up. He said, yeah, no problem, do that. So, all was good again. I had probably going to get another 6 months work here, at least, and you don't know what would have led on from there. But it was good. So we got the design, and we started setting up, and we started building these trailers. We started shipping them out to Sudan as groups of, I don't know, 10 or 15, I think. And the way it was all working is that when we're building these trailers, now I'm organising parts, we needed credit when I ordered steel or manufactured parts. I would need some credit because we were getting final payments on the shipment of the trailers to Sudan. So I'd worked out a payment scheme with the various suppliers that I would guarantee payment for the particular materials that I purchased for each element of the project, and they would get paid as we shipped them out. Everybody was happy, all going well. Well, I thought it was all going well, because what I'd done was, what they insisted on at that time was that if we agreed financial terms like that, then I would write a series of checks, post-dated checks, so they wouldn't have to come and see me again to get a check. They would have it, and it was up to me then to make sure the money was in the bank to cover that check that I wrote and signed, and they had a copy of my passport against these checks. So, okay, all going well. It was all going well, I thought. And then, when the date arrived that I was going on holiday, I thought, great, and I travelled up to Bangkok airport, and I went to the KLM desk to check in for the flight. And as soon as I handed the girl at the check-in desk my passport, I knew there was some problem going on, because I seen her stand up and look around and nod her head. I thought, what's that about? And then the next minute is, there's 4 policemen around me, and they said to me, they showed me a copy of my passport. They said, is that you? I said, yes. And they looked at my passport, they said, do you agree that that's the same? I said, yes. They said, you're under arrest. I said, I'm under arrest? I said, what for? They said, for presenting dud checks. One of your suppliers has complained that she, a lady, had put a significant size check into her bank. We were told that there was no funds in the bank to cover it. I thought, impossible, absolutely impossible, because I'd seen an email saying that the funds had been deposited in her account. So how could it be impossible that the funds weren't there to pay her out on a check? I said, okay. But what they did do is that they took me from the airport and took me all the way back down to Rayong, to Maptaput, and took me to the police station. I got in there about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to find that this supplier lady was waiting for me. And she came up and she spat in my face. She said, you're a horrible, horrible person. She said, I've been told by your directors in Bangkok that you're leaving the country with the company's money, and you've already transferred it out the country, and you've robbed the company blind here. What the fuck are going on here? I said, no. I said, you're totally wrong. Now, I haven't told you one thing, and I need to tell you, is that I was also taking a lady home with me that was to become my next wife, actually. And she was at the airport with me when I was arrested, and she travelled back to Maptaput with me. Another nice lady, I must admit. And when we were at the police station, I said, you can ask her. I said, we've still got all. She said, you're leaving the country and not coming back. I said, rubbish. I said, we're just going on holiday. I've got my flight back, etc. She wouldn't believe me anyway. She thought, her mind was totally corrupted against me, that I was a villain in all of this. So I was taken from there to a police cell, and I was told I'd be held in that police cell for the possibility of 2 occasions. The first occasion would be I'd be released is if the money was found and released and the lady dropped her complaint. And secondly, if that didn't happen, then I'd be transferred to one of the main prisons in Chonburi to await trial. My God, things just got worse and worse and worse. But they took me into the cell, and they took me up above the police station, and they locked me up there. And that was going to be nearly the death of me, that particular episode. And I'm going to tell you how that went in the next video, because it's a long story as well, something similar to this. So I'll terminate this one here now. I think you've probably had enough from me now. And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. And if you've got any comments, any questions, please put them down below. I will get back to you. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe, please like. You're welcome to visit my website, talkofthailand.com. And the most important thing of all is please stay safe, get your vaccines as quickly as possible, and hope all goes well for you and your family. Thank you again, and goodbye.